Welcome to the class. Today we are going to talk about another aspect of language which helps us improve our language in terms of its impact. As we know very well by now that language learning is one part and trying to make it impactful, impressive and spontaneous is continuous goal in the area of learning language, in the area of doing well professionally, in the area of making things impactful for us, because language is the only medium of construction and dissemination of knowledge and information. We transmit all kinds of knowledge and construct them through language. Particularly, English happens to be one such language where we need to perform most of the tasks in our personal and professional domains. Hence, a continuous effort to improve it further becomes imperative for its functioning, for its betterment, and hence this discussion. So what is it that we want to discuss? As it suggests you from the screen, it is figures of speech. We are talking about speech and we are going to work on figures of speech in spoken and written language. So it's a specific device which can be used in both written and spoken language. When we use figure of speech, it takes our performance in language to the next level. Not just impactful, it demonstrates our command and control, and therefore our ability to function in that language. Simultaneously, it adds to our confidence. In a particular way, there is no ordering in which we need to learn these different figures of speech as a mechanism in our language. At the same time, we are not trying to make a distinction that we need to learn about figures of speech only after learning underlying grammatical patterns. In fact, as you understand, learning anything in general and learning language in particular is about accommodation. Learning is not n+1. When we learn a new thing, it does not work in the format of addition. It works in the format of absorption and therefore accommodation. So, it's not fair to put these things together in cognitive platform or separate them, that we can learn one after the other. However, our effort in paying attention to this, our effort in paying attention to the available figures of speech in our language, in the uses of language by others, both in the form of written language and spoken language, will help us use them in our languages effortlessly and effectively. This is the best way to learn this thing. Now let's get to what is it that we need to learn. Before we go to the list of figures of speech, we need to add one more specific point about it. That figures of speech and its capacity to use them effortlessly is also a native capacity. It's part of native's capacity. native capacity means we acquire them effortlessly from the context when we use them. That is, when we learn the language using them from our immediate surroundings. In other words, when we learn the language, namely English in this case, in a natural way, through natural process. When we want to learn a new language in the classroom setting by paying attention to them, it's possible, but it requires additional attention. And hence, we do not have the list of these figures of speech to memorize. But if you pay attention to them and pay attention to the context in which they are used, you pay attention to the function for which they are used in the language, then they start appearing in your language in a natural way. That's the point I wanted to make. Hope this makes sense. And now we are going to look at what they are. There is a huge list of figures of speech. We will start looking at them one by one. So, I have told you several generic things about them. Look at this list of what they do. So, figures of speech are literary devices. As a matter of category, it is known as literary device. And its function is to present an idea directly making reference to something in comparison. So, they make comparison and draw parallels between otherwise unrelated things. And they do not provide any literal interpretation. You are going to see the meaning of these points carefully when you look at examples. So, and it creates a rhetorical effect in our speaking and writing. And it, like I said in the beginning, in a very creative way, it makes your capacity to use the language at a creative level. So, look at this. The first one is known as simile. Maybe you have heard this before, maybe you use this often, but we need to know in the context it's called simile. So, look at the example 1. So, when it comes from a poem, A Red, Red Rose by Robert Burns. There is a line in that poem, oh my love, oh, my love is like a red, red rose. I wandered lonely as a cloud. He has a simple lifestyle. He is as modest as a hermit. Now, look at the components in color. So, these are markers of similes. So, what is the goal? We are trying to compare love with red rose. In the second one, we are comparing I with cloud, or presenting I as cloud. And in the third one, simple lifestyle is because of simple lifestyle, modesty of this individual is compared with that of hermit. So, when you see the point that they do not provide literal interpretation, meaning when we say he is as modest as a hermit, we are not saying he, whoever this refers to, is a hermit. Therefore, it is not literal, but it is a device, literary device, to create impact, to give you a comparison to make the language impactful. We can simply say, he is very modest. Over. But that sentence is not as impactful as this one. He is as modest as a hermit. So it's an effort to create the picture of a hermit and therefore personify the modesty of hermit in the form of an individual we want to create. It's also an indirect way of compliment. And the name of this device is called simile. What are they? It's used in the comparison of two completely unassociated things or ideas. It most commonly uses the words like this one, like, as, like or as to draw the comparison. So that's what we know as simile. So this is one of the most often used device, literary device, which we know as figure of speech. Look at some more examples, like a face as dull as lead. So we are talking about a face and comparing its dullness. Cheeks like blushing cloud. So we use this word to make the comparison between cheeks and blushing cloud. Eyes as bright as blazing star, bold as hawk, as steady as clock. So we are giving you few examples of simile, and we suggest that you pay attention to people's speech, and when you read things in between sentences about the uses of simile. Another one is metaphor. I am sure you have heard this word multiple times before. What is a metaphor? You can start with the literal meaning of it, and metaphor, a word itself is a metaphor. So you look at the uses and then you can understand. So look at this. It's a type of comparison. This is also a type of comparison in which a word or a phrase is used in place of another to suggest likeness or analogy between the two things. When we use a word or a phrase as metaphor, it does not carry any literal meaning. Another important point, like simile, a metaphor, or in general, figures of speech do not create any literal sense. So look at this. This is the icing on the cake, to refer to the better part of something. So when we say icing on the cake, it has nothing to do with ice or the cake. Any cake has some decorative, good-looking component on top of it as icing. So on top of something, if we put something else, that is called icing on the cake. Silence as golden, to refer to the worth of being silent. Life is a roller coaster ride. Here, the term roller coaster is used as metaphor, alternating highs and lows, alternating between good times and bad times. So we often hear this metaphor with life is a roller coaster, meaning it goes up, it goes down, or it goes into the cycle of good time and bad times. All the world stays, and all the men and women merely players. So it's a very famous line from As You Like It by William Shakespeare. all the world is a stage and all the men and women merely players. So these are very well known metaphorical uses, and when we put some idea or something with the uses of metaphor, it takes your language to another level of completeness and demonstrates your command over the language, and therefore makes it impactful for others who are listening to you. Third, another type of figure of speech that we use is called personification. In personification, a thing or an idea is given human attributes or emotions. It helps establish a deeper connection with the reader, and they make a poetic expression in speech and writing. So, what does personification do? Establishes poetic expressions in your speech, and when you try to speak and when you write. You at this point take it as a footnote. When you listen to somebody speak, you get lost. You feel like listening to that again and again. Not because they are talking about something that you did not know, but simply because they have capacity to make you lost, which is called spellbound. And you like to hear what they say. To reach that level of convincingness in your speech, in your ability to communicate, ability to talk, these types of figures of speech add to a great deal. They help you achieve that level of assertiveness, that level of convincing qualities. So this is what this specific type of metaphor personification does. So we look at the example, and then you will see how an idea or a thing can be attributed human qualities, can have human attributes. So books are my favorite companions. This is called personification. So book is an inanimate object, but when you compare it as your companions, then you are personifying book as the people around you. You are trying to establish the impact that a book adds to you, the value that it adds to you, like the people around you. The stars winked at us from the distant black sky. So stars don't wink. They are inanimate objects, but we can present it in this way. This is called personification of stars. Look at the third example. But the old man always thought of her as feminine and as something that gave or withheld great favor. And if she did wild or wicked things, it was because she could not help them. The moon affects her as it does a woman, he thought. Look at it. Ernest Hemingway in this, The Old Man and the Sea. This sentence has examples of personification. So, by looking at these things, we can make our language impactful. We also mentioned these are literary devices. We have been telling you to read books, to read things. The more you read, the more you understand about these things. And if you are working with literary texts, they make your language even more impactful. Let's look at another one. That is called paradox. What is paradox? How does it work as a figure of speech? Paradox is a situation or statement that is true but sounds impossible or conflicting. Look at these things. on the slides on your screen. You will understand. We are giving at least 3 identifying features of paradox. The second one is the construction of a paradox consists of 2 contrasting facts or characteristics, and they are used as thought-provoking elements in writing, especially in literature. So look at again certain examples from, one is from Robert Frost: men work together whether they work together or apart. Look at the use of words in this sentence, and then you will understand the meaning, how it is paradoxical in nature. Go back to its characteristics. What is a paradox? A statement that is true but sounds impossible. That is, on one side it's saying men work together, whether they work together or apart. It sounds contrasting, but then it creates a very special literary context in terms of conveying your ideas. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. What's the meaning of more equal? Again, the contrast that is paradox is in its use. I must be cruel. I must be cruel to be kind. Cruelty and kindness, completely opposing attributes, used here to create a significant literary impact. I must be cruel to be kind. Think about this sentence multiple times and see what it tries to convey. A simple one line from William Shakespeare will make you think multiple times to understand what it means. And it makes your language intelligent as well. I don't know how to explain what it means to make your language intelligent, but adding wit, not humor, and adding impact with the use of literary devices, in the uses of your professional or language in your professional and personal domain, has a lot of impact. Another device is known as oxymoron. We hear this thing many times. Let's understand what it is. Let's look at the example and then we will look at its attributes. It was a bittersweet experience. An expression that contains 2 words which have got opposite meaning. Look at this. Bitter, sweet. 2 opposite features put together in one word. It was a bittersweet experience. So what experience was that? This usage is known as oxymoron. And this is used to express conflicting opinion or thoughts again. Oxymoron combines contradictory words, but a paradox combines contradictory ideas. So that was an awfully good movie. Awfully good. Awfully used as an adjective, as an adverb for this adjective good. How can a movie be awfully good? Look at the meaning of this sentence. Parting with her was a sweet sorrow. Paradoxical, known as oxymoron as a device. Look at a sentence by William Shakespeare from Romeo and Juliet. Oh, brawling love. Oh, loving hate. Look at this. So, uses of literariness with the help of literary device to make our language impactful is the idea with the use of figures of speech in our language. We can make our language richer by paying attention to them. Like I said in the beginning, there is no list of these devices available anywhere. We need to be aware, conscious, and paying attention to these things to be consistently and continuously working on it. Antithesis. Another device that involves two components in opposition at the same. The components in opposition follow a parallel structure. That is, they have the same grammatical structure. The parallel structure makes for rhythmic writing, we use that for making rhythmic writing in speech. Like, look at the examples, no pain, no gain. Antithesis device, no pain, no gain. Here, pain and gain, rhythmic words. Man proposes, God disposes. To err is human, to forgive is divine. So these are called, this usage is called antithesis. Again, go back and check, look at the attributes. Two components in opposition at the same, that is at the same time. So pain and gain are two things, they are rhyming, but two components, they are opposite of one another. For today, we are going to talk about one more. This is known as alliteration. Very poetic in nature, but important one, important device. Mostly used in writing. But if you get used to, you can also use this in spoken language. So look at this. Betty baked buns besides bacons. So all the words here start with ba sound. This is called alliterative in nature. So they sound the same. All the words begin with the same sound. Tick-tock, ta as in the beginning of the both component, both syllables. Coca-Cola, ka in both components. PayPal, pa in both the components. Peppa Pig, pa in both the components. Kit Kat. These are alliterative devices to create something which are simpler and impactful in its presentation. That is what we know as alliteration. So these are, to conclude for the discussions today, if we use these devices, if we pay attention to them, they make our language impactful. And making our language, our communication impactful, making what we wish to convey seriously impactful, should be a continuous goal for making our professional presentations proper, impactful and appropriate. With something new, we'll see you next time. Thank you. Until then.